Good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of The Message. I am your host, the Knowledge King. We'll spend this next hour with one purpose in mind, and that one purpose is delivering the message that God is Almighty. Everything that ever was, is now, ever will be, is a piece of God. Everything that ever was, is now, or ever will be, was made by God. Everything that ever happened, is happening right now, or ever will happen, was made to happen by God. God has a master plan for all time and all creation. God is Almighty. The message is brought to you by, is produced by the Society of Knowledge Incorporated. The society is an interdenominational religious spiritual ministry. Our members come from various different religious and spiritual backgrounds. We have various different religious and spiritual beliefs. Although we come from different backgrounds and have different beliefs, there's one belief that we share. There's one piece of knowledge that we hold in common. And that's the knowledge that there is a being. By no matter what name we may have been taught to call that being, by no matter what name we may have come to know that being, whether that name be God, Allah, Yahweh, Jesus, Jehovah, Buddha, nature, by no matter what name, we know that there is a being that possesses not some of the power, not most of the power, but all of the power. That's the reason we do this show, and the only reason we do this show, to deliver the message that that being that personally I call God, that being is indeed Almighty. As we begin the show, I want to remind all of you that today is July the 23rd, and I remind you of that because tonight, as we are on most Thursdays, we are live. And I remind you of that fact because this show is an open discussion, say two-way conversation. For those of you that are watching by Facebook, I invite you to join the discussion by posting your comments on Facebook. Sister Marcia, thank you for watching us on Facebook. Hello. Uh, I invite you to join the discussion. Uh, as important as joining the discussion, if there's something that's going on in your church, your mosque, your temple, your masjid, your place of worship, your synagogue, and you want to let the world know about it, post your comments on Facebook. Those of you that are joining by Zoom, you come on Zoom and speak your comments. Uh, if there's something that's going on in your nonprofit organization, I invite you to share that information. Sister Marcia, I know that the Lafayette branch of the NAACP is very active. There's something that the Lafayette branch is doing. Why don't you let us know about it? We can make sure the world knows about it. More important than what's going on in your place of worship, more important than what's going on in your nonprofit. If there's something that God has done for you in your life, a miracle that God has worked in your life. And I use that term literally, miracle, because the God that I'm going to tell you about is working miracles. Right now, July 23rd, 2020, the same way we read about God working miracles back in the days of Jesus in the Bible, God is working miracles today. So if God is working a miracle in your life, I invite you and encourage you to post your testimony on Facebook, call in Zoom, share your testimony. You know, folks that are going through some things right now, whether it's financial, a whole lot of folks are having financial problems right now because of this COVID epidemic. Uh, Health problems, folks are going through health, folks are going through relationship problems. If you're going through a problem and the medicine hasn't been able to help you, doctors haven't been able to help you, nothing's been able to help you, understand that God can indeed help you cure whatever problem that you have. If God has cured the problem that you have, share your testimony with the world. All right, let's want to welcome, bring in our panel, our Zoom panel tonight, Bishop John Milton of the African American Catholic Congregation, presiding over the Imani Temple number 49 in the city of Lafayette, and also the presiding bishop of the Lafayette province. Bishop Milton, good evening. Oh, we need to get your mic, Bishop.
Okay, good evening, Messenger King. I'm going to get this right soon. It's great to be back on air with you, and thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to tonight's topic.
All right. And we also have Messenger Ryan coming out of the Lafayette Center of the Society of Knowledge. Messenger Ryan, good evening.
Good evening. It's sunrise. Peace to everyone. Great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation, to the discussion.
All right. Well, as usual, let's get started. Let's get started. We have some announcements, and if I can see how to work this technology. All right. All right. That is our acknowledgement that you heard us say that at the beginning of the show. Today is indeed July 23rd. We'll have our announcements, our testimonies. After that, we'll have our religious spiritual study. And we are reminded, as always, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. And that reminder comes out of the first book of Thessalonians, chapter 5, verse 21. Tonight, we will continue our discussion about the Council of Nicaea, more particularly the African roots of Christianity. Sister Cheryl, thank you for joining us on Facebook. Our words of inspiration tonight will come out of the book of Exodus, beginning in chapter 9, verses 20, and we'll see how far we get with those. That's, you see on our screen right there, that's our main website, and that's www.godisalmighty.org. I invite you to lock that website into your web browser. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can visit that website, and there are links to all of our social media outlets. We have a blog, we have a Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You don't have to write all that down. Just lock that godisalmighty.org, lock that into your web browser. The message tonight, we are coming out of the city of New Orleans, but on the first and third Sundays at 9 p.m., the message comes out of the city of Lafayette, and that's delivered by Messenger Ryan King and Messenger Corey Olivier, and that's delivered on Facebook Live at The Messengers. We have a page, a Facebook page, and that's The Messenger. The show is produced by Lafayette, Louisiana Center of Society of Knowledge, Inc. Imani Temple number 49, you were just introduced to Bishop John Milton. Imani Temple number 49 of the African American Catholic Congregation. Bishop John W. Milton is the pastor. That's 201 East Willow Street in the city of Lafayette, Louisiana. Also, Imani Temple number 28 of the African American Catholic Congregation of Bishop Wendy Mee is the pastor. That's located at 2411 Treasure Street in the city of New Orleans. Brother DJ Groove, thank you for joining us on Facebook. A religious spiritual study, again, tonight, religious spiritual study, and we'll be discussing the Council of Nicaea, the African roots of Christianity. And what you see on your screen right now, that is just a depiction of the Council of Nicaea. And you see on your screen right now, and just we're going to open our panel up, but want to put this map back up because it's important. Particularly tonight, we're speaking about the African roots of Christianity. The map that you see on the screen right now, you'll see in where the cursor is right now. Okay, this area right here, Jordan, and then right next to it in that purple, that's Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, we see Israel. But what I really want to highlight to you, okay, what I really want to highlight to you is this right here, what the history tells us, the birthplace of Jesus Christ. Well, if you look at this area right here, and hopefully you can see where the cursor is moving around, you look at that area and look right next door, okay, right next door. You come over the peninsula right here, right next door, you see this big green area, and you see the name on there, it says Egypt, okay, Egypt. But look, I want to just point this out. Egypt sits on this landmass, okay, this body, and this landmass is Africa. So Egypt is a part of Africa. And right next to Egypt, you have Libya, you have Tunisia, Algeria, all of that. When you hear those names, that's Africa. Okay, you say Egypt, but it's Africa. The people that lived in Egypt were Africans. They lived on the African continent. Africa right next door to Israel. And now look, let's come up north, and we come to Syria. So when you're listening on the news and you're hearing about these countries, that's Syria. And then here we have Turkey. And Turkey, this is what we talk about when they talk about the Council of Nicaea. All right. So now we have Egypt, and now we Asia, and now we're getting into this northern area. That's Europe. But Europe is just right across the Mediterranean Sea from Africa. Okay, so we have Greece, we have Italy, France, Spain. That's Europe. So when you hear folks talk about the Europeans, well, the Europeans were right across the water from the Africans. Okay, from the Africans. All right. So I just want to get that little background. And now we're going to welcome back our panel members. So that just kind of set the tone a little bit, set the table a little bit, and we'll get into our discussion about the African roots of Christianity. Brother Gary, thank you for joining us on Facebook. All right, Bishop, you want to start us off?
Well, first of all, as we've been discussing, that the three monolithic religions are all interconnected. It's hard to have Christianity without understanding the Judeo context in which it evolved out of. In other words, that Jesus, the Christ, was not a Christian. The word Christian was not used in his day when he walked on the face of the earth. Jesus was actually a Jew. And as Archbishop Stallings taught in his lesson today at 11 a.m., that Jesus was not even an ordained cleric. He was not a rabbi. He was a layperson who understood and knew that what the religious authority was saying was a lie and it was wrong, and he refused to be hoodwinked, bamboozled. And so we first must know, with regards to Black people, there's a great book called The Black Presence in the Bible. So we rely in our religion upon the Bible as our sacred scripture, but many people don't see themselves, those who are African American or people of African descent, do not connect the Bible with their presence and their essence of who they are as African people. And even though you show the map of how close Egypt is and the relatively geographical relativity of the region, most people don't really understand what it means when it says that out of Egypt I will call my son. So the fact that when Jesus was to be killed and the order went out, he fled. His father took him into Egypt, African land. But this book, the Black presence in the Bible, if there are people who have not read this book or sources such as this book, you will have a mind-boggling awakening to understand that the biblical stories is our story. I've already talked about it in previous sessions, that our story has oftentimes been concocted. It has been stolen or borrowed, as they might say, and even the story of creation, a borrowed story. So once, as we search, and the reason that is relevant to our topic tonight, as we search for our true identity, how are you going to talk about reuniting with God and you don't even know who you are? So we must start. And so it's critical tonight that we reflect upon what it is that the Bible and what it is that the creeds of the church have to do with us. So I'll pause for a moment.
All right, Bishop, thank you for that. And I want to, just for some of us that might not be able to quote the chapter and verse, I did do a little bit preparation for tonight's show. And Bishop, I'm glad that you highlighted that fact when we speak about the African roots of Christianity. you can't get more to the root of Christianity than to Christ. And what you spoke about just now, I'm gonna Matthew. If you look in the book of Matthew, chapter 2, starting at verse 13, that speaks about the infant Christ child being taken out of Israel, out of Jerusalem, and into Egypt. And there the child grew and also grew in knowledge. So when we speak about the African roots, and again, Egypt being a part of Africa, when we speak about the African roots of Christianity, we see that Jesus Christ himself was schooled in Africa / Egypt. The messenger Ryan, you there with us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am here.
All right. You have some opening comments?
Yeah, I do. I have no letters in Christianity or anything like that. I'm an expert in it. But what I have been taught or informed of was that Christianity, as well as Islam and the Judaism, it all kind of relies on the story of Abraham, and looking at connecting that with African roots or what have you. Abraham was from the place a little bit further south of Turkey, closer to the Persian Gulf, this place called Ur. And that region there was these people, and I believe it was brought up on a show maybe a couple of weeks ago about the Sumerians. So that was the region where the Sumerians were before those little towns or whatever around it began to be established. And what pretty much happened there, from what I understand, like I said, I'm no expert in it, but from what I understand is that a lot of the teachings and things that they received from that was coming out of and from Abraham or whatnot about the gods and things like that was from the Sumerians. And now the Sumerians, they come across to that area by the Persian Gulf from the I forget the name of it, but it's something triangle. And that's pretty much supposed to be the cradle of humanity. And that's in Africa, right on about around Ethiopia. So like I said, I'm no biblical scholar, no Christian scholar, what have you, but speaking on connections with Africa, Ethiopia, all that is Africa. And so if those teachings and things came from there, then when you get to this debate about is the Son of God the same as the Father of God, there's a couple of different ways to start to look at that.
Right, and that will actually be our discussion topic of next week, and that is the Arianism, the controversy of Arius as to the nature, the relationship between Jesus and God Almighty. So I thank you, Brother Ryan. Just let me see if I can pull us all back in again. Okay, Ryan, you have something else you want to add?
Just right quick, it's called the Afar Triangle, AFAR Triangle.
All right, the Afar Triangle. I'm gonna have to look that one up. Yeah, just to give us a little bit more background, this discussion about the African roots of Christianity, that discussion coming out of our overall discussion about the Council of Nicaea. And I'm going to throw the map up again, see if I can get back to this map.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, Arius, one of the arguments was that the Son was a created thing, a created being. And so how could a created being, which means that it has a definite beginning, be equal to something that's eternal?
Right.
It has no beginning.
All right. Well, and we're going to get deeper into that next week.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's next week's discussion. This is the Council of Nicaea, as we were speaking, and we've been discussing that. It was a council in 325 AD that was convened. It was called by Emperor Constantine, and in Nicaea. Now, when I used to hear Nicaea, I thought it was in France, but no, it's not. It wasn't in France. It was in Turkey. And at the time, a little bit background. We talked about this a little bit last week. At the time, the Christian church, it had really two power centers. One was in Rome, and there was the Bishop of Rome, and then the other, and that was the Bishop of the West. So you had the Western Christian Church, and you had the Eastern Christian Church. And the Eastern Christian Church, that was based in Alexandria. And Alexandria is in Egypt. So you had these two competing, get a little bit understanding on this piece here, two competing factions in Christianity. Remember, at that time, Christianity you had bishops in different areas that had different areas of control. There wasn't any one overall authority, and everybody was kind of doing their own thing. There were some things that they had in common. Christians in Alexandria had some things in common with Christians in Rome. Some had, different understandings of who Christ was, how he should be worshiped, and all the rest of that. But there was a schism between the Eastern Church and the Western Church. And coincidentally, there was a schism between in the Roman Empire, the power struggle in the Roman Empire between the East and the West. And again, I brought the map up just to show a little something, that studying that I did, that I really didn't know before I really did the studying, is that even though Christianity is highly thought of as being a European religion, when you study the early Christian church, that church in Alexandria was not only one of the most powerful bishops in Christianity, in the early Christian church, but a lot of scholars, a lot of historians say that the church in Alexandria was actually founded by Saint Mark, the author of the Mark in the Gospels, the book of Mark in the Gospels. And the studying that I've done to this point, and Brian Bishop, you can comment on this. All of our Facebook scholars, whatever information that you have, you can comment on it. That Christianity spread. It didn't spread initially through Europe, but it spread through Northern Africa, Northern Africa. And then it went into Europe. Sister Candace, thank you for joining us on Facebook. All right, I'm going to pull the screen down, and Bishop, I don't know if you have some comments as far as the spread of the early Christian church.
Well, the answer would be yes. A book that I can refer another book. This is a book, a brother, Joachim Hunnam,
Yeah.
African Origins of the Major Western Religions.
Right. All right, brother. All right, Bishop. Yeah, you're right.
things are brought to light in this great book that is mind-boggling, but it's no secret that I guess one of my professors at Xavier University in theology school said, books like The Black President in the Bible, it's a ridiculous title. It's like, what's not black in the Bible, right? So, when we say the origins, the African origins of the Western religions, then we have to go all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, because in the book of Genesis, when we read about Moses, and we read about the fact that his wife was a Cushite. Now, everybody knows that a Cushite people is a dark-skinned, Afro-featured people who's undeniably African in connectivity with the people of African descent today. So whether you talk about the Ethiopians, the Cushites, the Hittites, all of the names in the Bible, many of them are of African origin. And so the names of people in the Bible, in the Old Testament, before Christianity. So when we say the origins of Christianity, we affirm that the origins of Christianity rest on the history of the Jewish or Judeo-Christian, the Judeo history that's given in the Old Testament. So from Abraham, or actually it goes further back, okay, right? So we know about the Hamite people, that it's unquestionably that branch of descendants of Noah who survived the flood and repopulated the earth. That the Hamite people were of dark hue or of African centeredness, no different than the people who walk the face of Africa now. And so when we look at the movement of people, we might look and say, oh, the people in North Africa, they're lighter skinned. Well, it wasn't always that way. It was migration. There were migrations and famines, and even the Bible tells us that when Jacob was old and one of his younger sons, Joseph, was sold into slavery, how the famine caused the movement of our entire population. Right. And so people should not be distracted. Now, we can look at miscegenation in America, how Black Africans were brought here on slave ships, but due to the raping of European men, of our Black women, we see light-skinned people these days, mulatto people or Creole people all over the place. And just a matter of 300 years, we're talking about the origins of Christianity being at least 2,000 years before Christianity. So, but if you want to look at the origins of it, we're going to go before Christ, quote, walked on the earth. And we'll see that the movement of people, the names, and all of the anthropological work and research that's out there all suggest that it was an integrated society. And much like Black people in America are a nation within a nation, there were nations within a nation then. And you can go to the Old Testament and you will hear Abraham say this quote. He says, I am an alien in a foreign land. Mm-hmm. God told him to leave his family and go to where I promised you this land. Mm-hmm. And when he got there, the whole time he was there, he always recognized himself to be an alien. Upon his death, he makes a pact with his leading servant and gets his servant to promise to find his son Isaac a wife from his homeland and bring her here. But he wasn't going back over there. Right. And he made the man promise, don't bring my son back over there, because he knew God promised me and my descendants this land. So he didn't want his son to go back. I hear Black people in America say, I ain't going to Africa. I tell them, I ain't got no problem with that. God gave us this land too.
All right. All right, Bishop, you touching upon the ethnicity of Abraham and Ham When we look at just a story going back in the Old Testament story, speaking about Moses, and as you say, Moses' wife. Well, Moses, I'm just think about it sometimes. I'll be thinking about it that uh, it says that Moses was raised as an Egyptian prince. And when I look at the statues and the different portraits of the Egyptian pharaohs, they're dark-skinned people, and the features of Africans. So if Moses is raised as an Egyptian, it would be kind of odd for him to kind of mix in and fall in, unless he had some similar features to Pharaoh and the other Egyptians. So that's just looking at that and just trying to add one and one together and see what number we come up with. But again, this is we say the purpose of this show is just to deliver the message that God is Almighty. It's amazing it's amazing to me how I can see all this intermingling, with Joseph and Mary leaving out of Israel, traveling into Egypt, going into Africa, and being able to live amongst the Africans. Abraham living coming out of Ur of the Chaldees, coming out of Babylon, going into that area of Canaan. How they able to travel thousands of years ago and still being able to understand each other's language and being able to get along. That's just amazing to think about. It's kind of hard for me right now. For me, if I just try to go 2,000 miles and go down into Mexico, I'm not going to understand the language there. So for them to be able to travel around like that and intermingle like that, that's just amazing.
Right.
And not only travel around like that, but bring their cultures with them. They bring their cultures with them. But there are a couple of books, and you may have seen when you held up the African origin of the major Western religions. I had a copy, I have a copy of it. And this is another book that I highly recommend to anybody that's doing their own research, studying themselves. And this is see if I can pull this up. Okay, this is the story of Christian origins. Okay, for some reason it's not coming up with the story of Christian origins by Martin Larson. And Bishop, one of the things that I like to do when I'm researching, when I'm studying, I like to go back and look at the bibliography. I like to, like Thessalonians say, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. I like to go back in the bibliography, and for some of our viewers that may not be familiar with the bibliography, that will be a part in a book, in the back of a book, that'll tell you where the author got his or her information. Okay, so if you look at this book and you look at the bibliography, and you'll see that it's folks like historians, ancient Greek historians, let's see, the treatise against Hermogenes, there's all kind of stuff in there, stuff I can't even pronounce. But when you read through here and read through those bibliographies, that'll give you an opportunity yourself. That'll give you an opportunity yourself to do your own research. Now, just a couple of other books that I want to share with our viewers, and just so that we can get a larger view. And sometimes when something that I found out during doing research is that there is bias. Historians, there is bias in that, and you'll find a lot of bias, particularly racial bias, when it comes down to the European slant of view. And it's good to try to get some input from others. And this is just a little bit along that African origin of civilization, myth or reality, by Sheikh and Diop or Jop. That's a book I would recommend. The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. That's another one. And again, it doesn't, not to be on this show and have anybody viewing the show and thinking, well, what is this? This is just a black show or what? Now, it's not a black show. What this is a show. We're just trying to share some knowledge. Okay. And again, the bottom line on it is delivering that message that there is an almighty being. And if you want to read and learn about something, one of the best ways to do it is by getting as much information. It's Bishop, to put things in a modern day context. It's like somebody that's trying to figure out what's going on in the United States today. And the only thing that they'll do is they'll look at MSNBC and don't realize that there's somebody over on Fox saying something different, somebody on CNN saying something else different. So that's being able to broaden, and hopefully this balances out some of these books that we've talked about tonight. It'll broaden out our knowledge base, and always, whether or not you read it in a book that's been written by, published by a European, or a book that's been written by, published by an African or an Iranian, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Bishop Sutton, thank you for joining us on Facebook. But Bishop, I just want to just open this up just a little bit more. And there's some names. I'm going to throw these names out. I'm throwing these names out because when I go throughout the week, I hear folks who say, man, look, I watched the show. I saw the show. They either saw the show live or they saw it during the week after it was recorded. And for all of our benefits, I like, as I say, just like sharing some knowledge, but there's some names about the early Christian church, the very early Christian church, just a few more names I want to throw out. And if I mispronounce them, Bishop, you can take and, enlighten me. But I'm gonna just throw these out for our viewers, so they can do their own research. Some of the early Christian church fathers were very, very influential in shaping the Christian church, and they were Africans. Tertullian, Cyprian, St. Augustine. Names when you do your research. And one of the things, Bishop, one of the things that I found is that particularly St. Augustine, you have, even though he was born in Africa, you have some historians that try to say that he wasn't really African, but he was a European that was just happened to be born in Africa.
Right.
So I mean, that's some of the stuff that as you do your research, things that you find out. Bishop.
Yes, sir. So at Imani Temple, of course, we acknowledge the influence of traditional African religions on Christianity. And so particularly in relation to Catholicism, many people know that Catholics call upon the saints or rely upon the saints. And we have Saint Anne and Saint Jude and Saint everybody. And so that's no different than when African people would call upon their deceased loved one, believing that they can intercede on their behalf. From that notion comes the notion that Jesus now sits at the right hand of the Father and intercedes on our behalf. So in my church, we open up our service with the calling of the ancestors. And even in Roman Catholic liturgy, we would open the Mass by saying, after the greeting, or part of the greeting would be, now that the church militant and the church triumphant have been joined together, let us pray. Now, what that means is that the church militant is all those who are alive and walking on this side. You got legs and feet and you're still in your body. But the church triumphant are all those who have died and have gone on to glory. So that in chapter 12, verse 7, it says that when we die, our bodies return unto the earth, and but our spirit returns unto God who first breathed it in within us. And it's one with God in all ways, such that if God is present, so are the spirits of our ancestors. And so in my church, we call upon Saint Augustus, Saint Martin Luther King, and we invite people to reflect upon all the men and women who in their lives, they know that they stand upon their shoulders to move forward. So this is an African way or African worldview of being in touch with the ancestors who have gone before you. And so when we say Catholic rituals of honoring ancestors and declaring them saints, it is more than just acknowledging that that was a great person who walked on the earth and is a good example. So we want to remind the children how to be about that person and that they might be like that person. It's more than that. We believe that the spirit world, because African people are spiritual people, and we welcome and we participate in the spirit world even while we're the church militant on this side. So when we talk about the origins of Christianity, you can see the practices of many traditional African religion in our various ways of being in our current day Christian practices. Unfortunately, most people don't know about it. So in this book, of course, that we just shared with each other, they talk about the role of St. Augustine. And one historian says, I'll read, St. Augustine's brilliance is due to his study of the great work of Homer and Socrates and Plato and Virgil and Aristotle and other Greeks. And the key thing about it is that the great Dr. Ben explains that all of these Africans were influenced by indigenous Africans. And so all of the Europeans whose great names are if you go to Columbia University, there's a building with all their names on it. And I'm talking about Socrates and Homer and all that stuff. And even John Milton's name is up there. Not me, but the white John Milton of the 1500s, a great writer. But their knowledge came from the Nile. Their knowledge came from Africa, from Kemet. And even when Jesus came out of Africa, they say even as a young boy, the rabbis would say, or the Bible tells us that after Jesus would speak in the synagogue as a child, which was unusual for a child or a woman to speak in the synagogue, but Jesus would speak and they would say, wow, that they were astonished. But they were astonished because Jesus brought the knowledge that came out of Africa and brought it to that place where he was raised and the story of Christianity is told.
You know, there just listening to your comments, something that the Spirit just moved on me, that what I've read, and just now you spoke about Jesus going into Africa, going into Egypt, going into Africa, and learning, and the studying I've done about the Greeks and the Romans that will go into Africa and have knowledge and gain knowledge that was later on, you know, Europeanized. But just the fundamental fact of thousands of years ago, that racial division between the, you know, when we look at the Europeans coming out of Greece, coming out of Rome, going into Africa, uh, the Asians coming out of Babylon, coming out of as Ryan has spoken about coming out of that, you know, present day Iraq, traveling into Israel, into Canaan, into that area, and these different races being able to intermingle. And we spoke earlier about being able to talk to each other, and now we see them sharing their culture. It just seems as though it's just kind of striking that maybe, just maybe, there was more of an acceptance and an ability to walk across racial lines and cultural lines and to share and mingle. It just seems though maybe people were more tolerant back a few thousand years ago than they are today. Yeah, that's just an observation.
Yeah. Well, we know that the way that Europeans were able to conquer Africa was because one of the essence of Black people, our spirituality, is that we are hospitable. And so when they were mapping out Africa in the early 1800s, and later, of course, it was divided and colonized by the various European nations, but the explorers who went there and did the mapping and whatnot for the European Geological Society, I think it was called the British Geological Society, they were welcome. They when they would show up on their canoes and the border of a tribe, it'd be, you're a guest, you're a visitor. And they mistaken the fact that these African people in their humility would bow to them as a sign of homage and a sign of respect and a sign of humanity. They took that to mean I am superior. Mm-hmm. These people will bow to me. They misunderstood, and they still misunderstand our ways of being. So when a white man goes into a Black church, a mother church, and shoots up 11 parishioners doing Bible study, and on the very next day or 2 days later, members of that church can be on national TV in America and say, we forgive you. These people don't understand Black spirituality. Mm-hmm. And yet, it has led for misfortune to us. They look at St. Augustine and they think that because he studied Socrates and those guys, the Greeks, without recognizing that who did the Greeks learn it from? He may have got a refresher from them. But where did they get it from?
Oh, right. With the source. The source.
Right.
I have just a couple of comments and then we'll take and see if we can get as close as we can to ending at the bottom of the hour. But just a couple of comments. And this is just bringing things a little bit into context as far as that Council of Nicaea. And something I learned today is that, you know, when I was studying and learning about how Christianity actually spread across North Africa before going into Europe, one of the things that I was reading, and that was that the early Christianity, religion of Christianity, was considered a religion of dissent, against the expanding Roman Empire. And now that would explain some of the sentiment of the Romans as far as suppressing early Christianity. And when you just kind of think about things, the history of the Romans was really not to bother about anybody else's religion, as long as they could have the subjects and take money from them, collect taxes from them. They didn't really care about their religion. That's what the Bible tells us that about the Romans when they conquered Israel. Okay? They conquered that area and they let the Jews keep their religion. They kept it as long as the Romans controlled the government. So they were tolerant, didn't really care about how you practice, what religion you practice, anything else like that. As long as you didn't fight against the Romans and you paid Caesar, paid the emperor his money, gave him his tribute. But then we see the persecution, because we don't really hear about persecution to that extent by the Romans of the Hebrews, of the Jews. As I say, when we read the Bible, Jews were allowed to practice their religion. The Romans didn't bother about that. But when it came down to Christianity, the Romans were persecuting the early Christians. And this is, again, a little bit of research that Christianity being a religion of dissent against the expanding Roman Empire. And we see a very smart move, in my estimation, my opinion, a very smart move, a very slick move by Constantine in recognizing that he was in a struggle, a fight for the secular world government, and any allies that he could get would help him to secure his power over the Roman Empire. And seeing that slick move, in my opinion, that slick move to stop the persecution of the Christians and to actually bring them into his battle, his struggle for power. So it's kind of interesting that we have Constantine, who was not a religious leader, having him calling a meeting in Nicaea, whereas he crystallized that early Christian church and in turn gained power to help him fight his secular enemies. So I just wanted to end with that. And we see, I think we commented upon this a little bit last week, as far as, what was, is still going on. We see that intermingling between the church and the state, even in politics now, we see that occurring. But as we close out, Bishop, I think usually we let you close things out, but we're going to let you start off, and then Ryan. Bishop, you have some closing comments.
Right. So I want to say that, the Ankh of the Kemet people is so close and looks so close to that of the Christian cross. Mm-hmm. And we know the story being told that Constantine, while on the battlefield, had a vision from God, and that vision from God led him to place upon his sword, his handle, to be placed the shape of a cross, and that he was converted to Christianity himself. Now, we know from the whole story of how it was that the Jews, or the Jewish people, and the Roman people in the days of Jesus and Jesus' birth, how they had a whole system of agreements together. That's how they knew at the trial of Jesus which tribunal to bring him to first, and how to make the accusation, and which governor had the jurisdiction, and Pontius Pilate wiping in his hand and say, I find no wrong with this man. And then the Pontius Pilate says, I'm going to throw this off on you, the Sanhedrin, and this Jewish council. Y'all make the decision. Crucify him, crucify him. Yes, I think you hit it right on the nose, and some people don't understand the interplay between that acceptance of Judaism to that of the political authority of Rome in the days of Jesus, in the walk of Jesus. Christianity then becomes the common enemy between the Jewish people and the Roman Empire. And yes, so I like to think that my Christianity comes off of the branch of Christianity known as the Coptics, which is a sect of Christians who are primarily based in Egypt, who Arian, I know we'll get into it next week, Arian, the one who came up against the bishop of Alexandria, and that is Bishop Alexander, came against his bishop and pulled the people in a bifurcated way, but that his faith is more of that in line with earlier and traditional religions of the African people. And we'll see that the decision of the council of the 318 men or whatever number that came together for the Council of Nicaea, how it is in their repudiation of Arianism, it basically was and resulted into an affirmation of white dominance or European global worldview to be accepted by all.
Politics in the church way back when. All right. Thank you, Bishop. Messenger Ryan.
Yes, sir. I really appreciated the discussion. I didn't have to say much of anything this evening, you know.
Right.
But, and I didn't have that first book, but I got this other one here. If you could see it, I don't know if you could.
Yeah, the blue screen. What's the title? Because we can't see it on the blue screen.
That is.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Story of Christian Origins. Got it. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, so, and then just a remark on the Romans themselves, their origins began, from Africa, if you will, because they come from the Etruscans. I don't know if I'm saying it right, or Etruscans, something like that.
Either way.
Yeah, but there's some melanin dominant persons making their way all the way around, going into that corner of that little boot right there with Italy and all that. But so all that's kind of tied in. When you speak on that the origins of anything, if it said that everything comes from Africa, or all things originated out of Africa, or life rather originated from Africa, human life, then anywhere anybody is found, that would be something that originated in Africa. You can't get away from the roots. So I guess it's sort of a misnomer about the African origins of Christianity, relative to anything else in the world. As far as it concerns, it's coming from humans. But looking at the Stone Age, what do you know about the Stone Age? And I kind of came across that information while kind of looking into these topics we're talking about tonight, as far as the Council of Nicaea. And it seems like that was a 3.4 million year period, and it only ended about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, when you first start seeing these other cultures start to pop up. And that's with in particular, that's when the Bronze Age came about. And that's when Greece started to get big. But Greece, again, originated pretty much from around that Turkish area, from those people and Eric coming around that way. You know, so that, you know, that's something that happened over time. But they finally, you know, settled in that area, and then they began to grow, you know, and to diversify their culture away from, even though they still kind of, you know, looked upon the old gods and things like that, it was kind of moving away, you know, from that, and then as time would have you, you know, they wind up going back into Egypt, and you get the Ptolemaic dynasty and things like that. You know, that those were after Egypt had been conquered or whatnot. You know, and that's before, you know, Christianity. You know, so all these things, you know, interplaying, and like I said, I'm no Christian scholar or anything like that, but just looking at, you know, how all these things began to develop, and people being pushed from, you know, the Egypt area and going more west, you know, towards West Africa, and just carrying this knowledge and continuing to spread this knowledge, and then, you know, again, continuing to move up and through Europe and things like that, and again across the rest of the planet, just dropping this knowledge off. You know, so like I said, that's just my, you know, perspective on it, my opinion on it. Just again doing a cursory study.
Right. All right. Well, Bishop Ryan, I thank you all for being on the panel tonight, for sharing this knowledge. And as I said, you know, I get comments throughout the week, folks that have watched the show, and it's helped, you know, either reinforce knowledge that they already had or spurs them on to doing some research of their own. But everything that we've talked about tonight is everything that we talk about every week, one purpose in mind, and that purpose is to deliver the message that there is an almighty being. And just to show you how complex, and when I talk about there being an almighty being, this complex story of creation, whether we're reading the Jewish Bible, the Christian Bible, the Islamic Bible, you know, the Quran, whether we're reading the Epic of Gilgamesh, no matter what it is that we're reading, there's an underlying theme, and that theme is that there is a being that's created all these things. And whether there was any intermingling of Africans and Europeans and Asians in the formation of Christianity, and I don't think there's much dispute about that. But if this being, if God was so omniscient and omnipotent to be able to move men all over the face of the globe, able to communicate, able to interact, then indeed, if, and I'm saying if for some that may not know it to be a fact, indeed, there is an almighty being. And because there's a being that could have Africans intermingling with Europeans, intermingling with Asians, because there is a being that could bring all of that together and bring us to this day in the year 2020, because there is a being that is so great at planning and making that plan come through, because there is a being that is indeed almighty. I'm at peace. And I can rest no matter what's going on. And as we close tonight, we've gone a couple of minutes over. Brother Leroy, thank you for joining us on Facebook. First Lady Tatiana, I apologize for not acknowledging you earlier. Thank you for joining us on Facebook. Sister Carlina, thank you for joining us on Facebook, because there is indeed a being that is almighty, I have peace. And it's my prayer as I close that that being, that person that I call God, that being bless you in this upcoming week, bless you and yours with peace. Good night, Bishop. Good night, Ryan. Good night, all of our viewers.
Very much.